It's a great pleasure to get back to Knowledge Nuggets. Right from episode one, I think each session has been really great. And it's my honor and privilege to come back and present session number 14 at Knowledge Nuggets. So yes, without further ado, I'll just jump straight into the topic which I have thought about sharing with all of you today. So as you can see, the name of the session, I have kept it as 9 steps to keep a crowd hooked, public speaking and beyond. And if I'm assuming most of you would have read the mailer, the invitation mailer for this particular Knowledge Nugget session. So you would have seen a little description was given there. I just want to start with that description that when we hear something called as public speaking, we tend to think that, okay, I think it's just for the big guys, or probably just for the leaders, or probably for the experts. It's not really for me. Who am I to just go on stage and talk? And you'll be surprised to know that I used to think like that once upon a time about myself. I used to think that only people who can articulate themselves really, really well should go on stage and do public speaking, or maybe it's only for the teachers or for the big leaders and people like that. But then, as I have said in that particular description, as long as you have an agenda, as long as you have a story to share with the world, and as long as God has given you a voice, each of us are public speakers, and we can go out there and we can express what we have to express. So with that background in mind, I've just compiled a set of steps that we can take to get better at communicating and probably getting better in public speaking. So when I go through this presentation, my only request is don't just imagine yourself that you are on stage and you have the mic in front of you and you're speaking. This also is applicable for whenever you are presenting in any office meeting as well. It is applicable there as well. Or probably you're presenting in front of a client, or probably negotiating with someone, or maybe you are a leader of a team and you have to inspire and motivate your team. So all these are occasions where the public speaker inside you comes out. And a lot of what I'm going to discuss today are some of the effective steps which have helped me somewhere become a little better communicator than what I was earlier. So happy to share that with all of you. So starting from these steps, the first step that we need to take as far as walking the path towards becoming a better public speaker, here goes. So disclaimer, some funny pictures will also come on the side so that you can relate to what I'm talking. All these pictures are taken from the various opportunities I've got at Tally to MC and entertain you people, and also some of the other work that I've done on the sides as far as theater is concerned, where I've got the chance to express myself. So step one, what we have to focus on when we talk about public speaking is that first you need to organize what you have to say. We'll just get to the points one by one. The first thing inside this particular step is make an outline. So now there is not any single best way in which you can organize your speech. There is no given formula in which you can do that. There are different ways in which you can organize your speech, and it often depends on what is your speech topic and what is the objective you have with the audience you're talking to. So you can adopt multiple approaches. You could go with chronological, which is basically you can arrange your points in a way that you start from time-wise, so earliest time to a later point in time. So that's chronological for you. You can go with spatial, where probably if you're talking to your team about the flowers in your garden, you can probably start from little plants, which are more or less at the ground level, probably moving on to larger shrubs and trees, so on and so forth. So that's more of a spatial, a space-related order. It could be a cause-effect thing, which we call as a causal flow. It could be a comparative kind of a flow also, when you are trying to portray in front of the audience two scenarios and you want them to compare and want them to understand what's the difference. Or it probably could be a problem solution kind of an approach, where you talk about a particular problem and then as a public speaker or as a leader, you're proposing a solution to that problem. So these are one of the many approaches you can use to make an outline of what you're going to speak. The second point, which becomes most important, is you have to have a rocking start. So I think this is something which we can learn from the world of cricket. So therefore, I am of course a very big CSK fan. I think all of you know that. The way the openers are batting this year in the IPL for CSK, Murli Vijay, not really the type of opening that you want. You kind of want to have an opener like KL Rahul, who can really hit the ball right from the first shot. And that's exactly how your speech also needs to start. You need to have a rocking start to your speech. And why should you do that? Because your opening or your start should immediately capture the attention of the audience. Uh, Now, this is not something which happens spontaneously. There are several techniques you can use to actually have a rocking start. So, for example, you could start with a startling question. Out of the blue, you can just ask a startling question, or you can make a challenging statement, or probably you can say a famous quotation by some great person. Sometimes there have been some speeches where I've started with a small anecdote or a story, or maybe you can display some object or some picture like I have done in this particular image that you see in front of you, or anything. You can do any attention building reaction that is linked with the content of what you have to say. So long story short, you definitely need to have a rock solid entry to get the attention of the audience from the first second itself. The third point here is you need to work on your body. So now don't get confused by the icon. I don't mean your physical body as such. I'm talking about the body of your speech. So we talked about the starting. Now I'm talking about the body or the middle part or the main part of your particular speech or your presentation. So one thing where we need to be very careful about is that there is no use dumping 100 facts on your audience. And I'll tell you the reason why, because as humans, our memory is extremely short. Our attention span is hardly 20 to 25 minutes, and we are able to retain only so many number of points. So therefore, don't try to cram too many ideas or thoughts inside the body of your speech. It doesn't really work. Again, how you can organize the body of your speech is you can split your speech into certain main points which you want to leave the audience with. So once you decide that, okay, let me have 3 main points, then you can split up these main points into sub points. And then with each sub point, you can have some supporting material. Now, when I say supporting material, what does it mean? So it basically means things such as statistics or testimonials. It could be examples or stories or facts, etc. So what I'm trying to say here is that when you look at the body of your speech, you could have main point 1, main point 2, main point 3. Now inside a main point, you can have sub point 1 and then supporting material for sub point 1. You could have sub point 2 and then supporting material for sub point 2. And then you move on to the next main point. That is how you can kind of structure the main body of your speech. And then of course, once you have a start, once you have a middle, you also have a conclusion. You need to always have a meaningful conclusion. And why is that important for you? Because this is your last opportunity to leave a lasting impression with the audience to whom you're talking to. If you were informing them about something, then one of the greatest ways of concluding is just to summarize what you have already said. So in all probability, when this particular session ends today, you will find me kind of summarizing all the steps that we had. If you were persuading them to do something, then you should definitely conclude with a call to action or maybe a motivational message that, I want you to do this. And also pretty much like your beginning, you could also conclude with maybe a challenge or maybe a question or maybe a quotation, which gives meaning to what you have to share with your audience. Here, I would just like to tell you 2 things that you definitely should not do. And most of us have a tendency of doing that, which is why I just wanted to spend a few seconds on that. When you're concluding your speech, when you're concluding your presentation, sometimes you will suddenly remember, oh, I forgot to talk about this point. And I definitely should talk about it right now. It's a bad idea. You will be tempted to somehow at the last moment while you're concluding the speech, you'll be tempted to bring back that particular idea you had forgotten about and you will want to talk about it, but it just confuses your audience. So don't do that. And second is, many of us have got a tendency that, we end with an apology. Please apologize if in case I may have done or said something during my talk, or maybe if, something went amiss. We have a tendency of apologizing and ending. So that is again a very bad idea. The only idea I'm talking about here is that you should essentially always finish on a high, and therefore try to keep things as positive as you conclude your speech, as you conclude your presentation. And the last point over here I would like to stress on is Go smooth on your transitions. So we spoke about having a rock solid start. So you should smoothly transition from your speech opening to your body of your speech. Now inside the body, we spoke about having 2 to 3 main points. So you should then transition from one main point to the first sub point, from the first sub point to the second sub point, from the second sub point to the next main point, and then eventually you gradually move towards the conclusion. And there are a lot of these techniques you can use to transition. So for example, you can have transitory words. For example, you could say, finally, we come to that particular section on this stage, or you could say, moreover, I have to add this particular aspect to the discussion what we are having. So you could use these one words like finally, moreover, etc., and you can take the discussion ahead. You could also use certain phrases. For example, moving on is a very common phrase we all use. Moving on to the next point. So these are all transitory phrases which keeps matter very simple and smooth. You could even transition using questions. That okay, this program was good, but then what was the problem with it? Let's have a look. So this is an example of transitory questions you can use to actually transition from one point to another point. So that pretty much sums up the first step, which is at the beginning, when you are clear about what you have to present, it's very important that you organize what you have to say to make it more effective for your audience. Moving on to the second step. So when we talk about step number 2, the thing which we all should be clear about is what is your purpose? Let me just go to the sub points here. First of all, you have to be asking yourself, what's your general purpose? So now what do I mean by a general purpose? Most speeches or most presentations that you will ever give in your lifetime will serve one of the 4 purposes. What are these purposes? Either you might be informing someone, or you might be persuading someone, or you might be entertaining someone, which most of the times I have done whenever I've come to the stage at Tally. Or you can inspire someone, and that is very important for you, especially if you are leading a team. Now you may have the argument that no, I can entertain also and inform also at the same time, or I can inspire also and persuade also at the same time, which is fine. But then it is usually considered to be a bad idea for your speech or your presentation to have multiple general purposes, because again, you tend to confuse the audience in a very limited span that you have with them. So the idea is that you always stick to one general purpose, and maybe even if so, you can inform, you can educate, and probably also crack a few jokes in between. So that way, your main general purpose is to inform, while you also kept the audience entertained by cracking those jokes in between. But that does not mean that informing and entertaining both become your general purpose, because then you can't do equal justice to both ends. Once you've answered this question, that what is your general purpose, you should ask what is your specific purpose. So specific purpose is nothing but a one-sentence statement about what you hope to accomplish from your speech. It should be worded from the audience viewpoint. I know it sounds a bit silly, or probably it might sound a bit like childish, but it always helps wherever you are going on stage to give a big presentation or probably give a speech, to write down that specific purpose somewhere. It helps you to be clear in your head that what is your focus, what you want to achieve in this particular speech, and it helps you to craft everything in the speech in accordance to that particular specific purpose. The last point in this particular step, which I want to take you through, is the confidence, conviction, credibility cycle. So this is how it works. Once you're absolutely clear in your head what you're going to present about, you get confidence. When you get confident, you start believing more in what you have to say. And because of that, it comes across when you present. You come across as convincing. You come across as a person who has a lot of conviction. So your confidence turns into your conviction. And then when you show that conviction to an audience, you are perceived to have credibility. They start viewing you as a credible source of information. And therefore your conviction translates into your credibility. So this is what I meant when I said the confidence, conviction, credibility cycle. The audience starts paying attention to you and starts viewing you as somebody who can make them change their mind about something, or they're willing to consider your viewpoint. So that was all about step number 2, which is you have to be clear about what is your purpose. Now moving on to step number 3. Step number 3 is focus on how you say it. In case you're wondering where this photo is from, it is basically from, I think, a couple of years ago when I played a very sad version of Emperor Akbar in one of our tally programs. So some of the points which fall under this particular step. Number one is write for the year. Now, there is something which we all do, and it's a mistake, but we don't really quite realize that quite often. When we're presenting, when we are preparing for a presentation or we are preparing for a speech or something like that, we tend to write things down first. That what I want to say, I want to write it, which is absolutely fine. You're most welcome to do that. But then you have to understand that how you write and how you speak are two different things. When you don't understand a line in a particular book, you have the luxury of reading the line again to understand what that line meant. But when your audience hears you and they hear you speaking a line and they don't understand, they don't have that luxury. So therefore, whatever you say has to be clear to the audience at the first instance itself, which is why you must be all the more careful to draft your content in such a way that even if it means using very simple, crystal clear language, probably a bit of repetition, it actually helps your listeners to retain what you have to share with them. Therefore, when you're presenting or when you are giving a speech, try to use short words, short sentences, short paragraphs, and write your speech accordingly. And one tip that I can share with you here is, after you have written down whatever you want to speak about, it's a great idea to just, shut down the doors and windows and just read the content aloud to yourself. You will automatically find that certain places you are getting stuck or you're not comfortable saying them. You will know what to change there to make it more pleasant for the ear, not only for you, but for your audience as well. Moving on to the next point, be specific and vivid. So now the English language is a very beautiful language and very funny language also. Some words are general and therefore they have a lot of different meanings, which is why we should be using specific words which convey exactly the meaning we want them to convey. Some words have certain associations and certain suggestions beyond their dictionary meaning. So these words, we basically call them as connotations. I'm sure you must have heard this word a lot of times during your discussion with your colleagues. No, let's not use that word that has a very negative connotation. Let's use that word that's a very positive connotation. So therefore, we have to make sure that we use those words which don't mislead the audience, but convey the right connotation which we want our words to convey. And then again, a great idea here is to use, action-oriented verbs, which add power to your speech. And also, it's a great idea to use the active voice. So now, I don't want to convert this into a grammar lesson, but we all know that we have two voices. We have an active voice, we have a passive voice. Active voice uses fewer number of words, and therefore it's easier to follow for any audience. So therefore, when you're writing stuff down for your speech or for your presentation, try to make sure you follow the active voice as much as possible. Rhetoric. Now, some of you might be imagining that I'm taking you slowly to the world of William Shakespeare, but no, that's not the intention here. Rhetorics or rhetorical devices are basically certain tools which make your speech, your presentation a bit more pleasing, a bit more entertaining for the audience. So, you can use certain things like simile, like metaphors, like alliterations, and you can use triads. So just to share with you a small example, simile is, of course, when you compare certain thing using the word like. So he bowled like the wind. They might say about fast bowlers. So that's where you're kind of comparing the bowler to the wind. So that's a simile. Alliteration is basically sounds of words which are repetitive, but they have this kind of jingle around them. So for example, protect and preserve peace. So you see how many times the letter P figures in this particular phrase. That's what gives the additional charm in an alliteration like this. And if I have to share with you an example of triad, I think the best example is, if you remember in the GST time, we all said, one nation, one market, one tax. So triads is nothing but a collection of three phrases spoken together, which are grouped in a manner for more impact. So you can use a lot of these rhetorical devices to add more color to your presentation, to add more color to your speech. Do more with less, avoid jargons. And I can't stress enough on this particular point. Now, most of us actually think that, if I throw big words, people will think very highly of me. That's not really the case. Jargons can actually pull you down because sometimes we end up using certain words which may throw off our audience, and our audience may not understand what we want to convey. So you know what, it is absolutely okay to use imagine instead of conceptualize. It's okay to say talk with instead of interface. You can say working instead of operational. You can say limits instead of parameters, so on and so forth. Try to simplify your usage of words. And another point is we often use certain phrases which increase the length of our content or speech unnecessarily. So, at the present moment in time. Now, at the present moment in time can be easily replaced with only one word, which is now. A large number can become many. To conduct an investigation can become investigate. Please take into consideration can become please consider. Exhibits a tendency can become tends to, things like that. So try to cut down wherever possible. It actually makes your presentation a lot crisper and a lot easier for the audience to follow. So yeah, that was all about step number 3, which is focus on how you say it. Then we come to step number 4, which is make your body speak. And I hope the picture somewhere serves the purpose. It's from one of my plays. So now I will probably just display all the points here which I want to talk about so that it's easier for us to understand this step better. So how you stand, how you move, what your gestures are, how your face appears when you're giving a speech or a presentation. Are you making eye contact or not? These are all important aspects of how your body speaks when you're giving a presentation or when you're giving a speech. So now if I talk about how you stand or what is your stance, so then your stance indicates your confidence level and your comfort level. If you slouch your shoulders, if you fix your eyes on the floor while talking to an audience, you tend to appear a little shy, a little weak, and you don't really want that to happen to any audience. So if you repeatedly keep shifting your weight from one foot to another, you appear as uncomfortable and nervous. So we need to try to avoid these things. How you move is very important. Sometimes we think that only when we go to the stage we will think about how we move, but no, that's not really the case. Even when it's a meeting room presentation, how you get up from the chair and walk towards the beginning of the room, the start of the room in front of the board, how you turn back and look at your colleagues and how you present your points, that also kind of leaves a mark on the audience to whom you're trying to talk to. Even during your speech, it's very important that you avoid pacing, you avoid fidgeting. You probably move a few steps as you are making a point, but your movements have to be really, really meaningful. Gestures, of course, gestures is something which is very culture centric. I think in India, there are certain gestures that we all of us are accustomed to do when we are giving a speech or when we are giving a presentation. And there are certain gestures which are universally accepted. So for example, if you do something like this, it represents urgency. If you do something like this, it appears means you are indicating generosity and kindness. If you are doing something like this, like moving your hands together, it indicates similarity. If you move it apart, you can say, he was here and his point was here and his point was here. So that means you're indicating some kind of difference between 2 points that you're talking to. So some of these gestures are universally recognized, but again, and the only reason I'm telling this is because we have our offices in Indonesia, in Kenya. As we speak, we are making some mark in the US as well. Very soon we will be interacting with a lot of people from various cultures, and therefore it becomes all the more important for us to understand that which gestures are probably not offensive in their culture when we speak to them, so that we can get the right amount of impact with an audience, whether it's an Indian audience or whether it's an international audience. Face is the mirror of the mind. We have all heard that from the childhood. So therefore your eyes, your eyebrows, your mouth, your eye movements, these are all things that you can use to deploy a variety of emotions, ranging from sad emotions to happy emotions. Making eye contact is very important. Looking completely through a person at some window somewhere makes that person feel that you're not paying attention to that person. The same is true for any presentation, any public speech as well. So you have to make sure that even when you're talking to a room full of listeners or maybe a huge audience out there, try and establish eye contact with certain people in the crowd. Try and cover probably segments of the crowd in one sweep of the eye. things like that. Don't look completely towards only one person. That may freak that person out. At the same time, don't stare at too short a time for anybody. It makes them feel that you're just doing it for the sake of doing it and don't really mean to have a connect. So eye contact, again, very important. And last but not the least, keep it natural. Now, what happens is sometimes now we read books on public speaking, we read books on presentation skills. Probably some of you, after having listened to me in this particular presentation, will go back and then you will start practicing some gestures which don't at all match with what you have to say. So I'm saying that no, there's no need to force fit this. At no point in time your body language should come across as unrehearsed, or it should not come across as fake. So it should be natural, it should be consistent with what you have to speak. And I think one of the great ways you can adopt to practice that is to rehearse your speech or presentation in front of a mirror. Maybe if you are a person who has never really believed in gestures before, you can start with smaller gestures, see whether you're not feeling awkward or not, and then maybe you can build it into your body language as the days go by. So that brings us to an end to step number 4. Moving on to step number 5, bring variety in your voice. So yet again, what I will do is I will show you all the points first, which I have in mind. So number 1 is posture and breathing. A lot of us don't realize that a good voice actually starts from good breathing practice. And this is something which is not only important for presentation skills, but my sincere suggestion is it is something which is good for your health as well. You need to start breathing in the right way, and the breathing the right way is to breathe deeply from your abdomen, from your lower chest. That is the right way to breathe. Most of us probably what we do is we end up doing the mistake of breathing from our throat, and therefore that is not the right way how our body will get that right amount of oxygen. If you practice good breathing, what will happen is your vocal quality will actually go up, and you will automatically see that you're able to speak better. You have much more better control on your voice if you are breathing right. So breathing, very important. Posture, again, yes. If you slouch, if you hunch your shoulders, if you look down on the floor, then your airflow will reduce and you will feel that your voice is getting a little stuck. It is not having that great quality. But if you stand straight, if your knees are slightly flexed, head is straight, leg little bit apart and shoulders are back, you will feel that not only do you feel confident, but you also feel that you have a lot of control on your voice, on your breath. Then we have to, the second point mentioned here, which is emote with PQRS. So what is PQRS? PQRS is a very quick formula. P is for pitch. So we all have, some of us have voices which are high pitched, some of us have low pitched voice. Q is quality, which can be pleasant, it can be harsh. R is the rate of words per minute. Sometimes we tend to speak very fast, sometimes we tend to speak very low. Sound, and S is sound, which is basically volume. Now, there is no hard and fast rule that when you speak, you have to speak in one pitch, you have to speak in one quality, you have to speak monotonously only 453 words per minute, you can't go up and down, and your volume has to be consistent. There is no hard and fast rule like that. In fact, you should try and vary PQRS, which is pitch, quality, rate, and sound, as much as possible, because that is the way you will end up showing a lot of emotions, bringing a lot of emotions into your speech and giving that right vocal variety for your audience. So that's very important. And the last point I would like to spend time here in step number 5 is the golden silence. So there is a reason why Amitabh Bachchan is such a great actor, because when he says dialogues, they are obviously awesome, but if you would have observed him, some of his greatest moments on the screen have come when he is silent, when he's just staring at you. And silence is a very powerful tool. It can be used to emphasize points. So you're telling 10 sentences, suddenly you take a pause. Then you tell a very important statement, then you pause again, and then you resume what you had to speak. Just try this and you will see that your audience will sit up and notice you, that they will hear that, yes, I think he told something really important right now. So take that pause to emphasize points. Of course, needless to say, whenever you take a pause like this, it also is an excuse for you to breathe and catch up with your breath. And then you can, punctuate or, have a gap between, if you're talking about multiple points, you can use pauses between points to demarcate that in the minds of the audience. and also, as I said, to attract audience. Sometimes, it's a great trick. You are in the meeting room, you are presenting for over an hour. You almost know in your mind that half the people are already asleep. You don't have to do anything. You have to just stop speaking. All of a sudden, stop speaking. You will see that people are suddenly they are okay. What happened? They will sit forward in their chairs. They'll sit up. They'll probably rub their eyes a little bit, and then you can resume. So it's a great tactic. Pauses and silence, if you can use them, it can be a golden weapon for you. Moving on to step number 6. So 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have covered 5 steps, 4 more steps to go. Research your topic. So when you talk about research your topic, the first point I would like to say here is the when is not enough. Now it's a no-brainer. Whenever we are asked to prepare for a particular presentation or to prepare for a particular speech or to do any kind of research at all, I think our default behavior is we will go on Google, we will type those keywords and we will get the information that we need. But I want to humbly request each and every one of you that web is not the only place where you can get information. Please read a lot of books from various genres. Again, this is something which may not come naturally to you, but if it's a habit that you can inculcate, it will do you a world of good. Fiction, non-fiction, both. Network with people and try to network with people who are from backgrounds different to your background. That actually expands your horizon like nothing else. Travel as much as you can. Obviously, not in the times of Corona, but if you read a lot, if you network with people a lot, if you travel a lot, you will see that your mind has started recording all these experiences, and our mind is very good at recording all these experiences. You will be surprised that the next time you need something very interesting and engaging in your office presentation or probably in your speech, one random story which would have happened to you 5 years back when you were at a trek in the Himalayas will suddenly come back to you, and you will see that it exactly matches the purpose of the office presentation you are going to give tomorrow. So that is what your mind records all these experiences and helps you out at the right time. So try to read, try to travel, network with people, read a lot of books. Moving on to the next point, mix it up. So when you research your topic, now unfortunately, when we say research, more often than not, we tend to be biased with statistics. Okay, I think I need to have at least 15 statistics in my presentation or my speech for it to make any sense. Not necessary. It can be a mixture of statistics, testimonials, anecdotes, fun facts, stories, which can give a nice balance to what you have to convey to your audience. Avoid using too many statistics because, as I told you many times before, audience has a little lesser mind space, little less attention span. They will not be able to remember all these statistics. Similarly, avoid telling too many stories, because the objective of a story is to emphasize a particular point to make it sound extra special. If you tell too many stories, then they also lose the relevance. So you have to strike that balance and maintain that in your speech. And finally, the last point is no unnecessary gyan. It's not compulsory that if you have researched and you have found 153 anecdotes, you have to dump all 153 anecdotes in your speech, in your presentation. Somewhere you need to choose only what you feel will have the maximum impact. If your support material is very complex or it involves a lot of statistics, you can try structuring it in a way that brings out its humane side. So I completely understand when probably you say this, that okay, all of us belong to the software product industry. Most of the time we talk about the product, or probably we talk about accounting. And truth be told, accounting is not exactly the most interesting subject in the world. So therefore, when we speak about that particular topic, chances are that our audience might lose us. So we have to structure it in such a way that if we can somewhere relate to the lives of the people who are listening to us. When you relate facts and figures to their everyday lives, people tend to listen to you more. And that is what we have to crack when you are probably telling something which is statistics heavy or research heavy, and you're presenting that in front of an audience. So that brings us to an end of step number 6, which is the need of researching your topic well before you present or you give a speech. The next step is step number 7, support yourself with visual aids. And the visual aid I have used in this particular photo that you have seen in front of you is nothing but toilet paper, which I attached on my face to form a beard. This I remember we had done, I think in 2016 December, when we were preparing for the GST period, and Kabali had also kind of released at the same time. So we did some activity in office to talk about how GST is important and how we should be all prepared for it. Tally for GST was the campaign that we had run. So when it comes to visual aids, the first point is selecting the right visual aids. Now, some of you might come back and say, what is there to select? I mean, PPT is the only visual aid which is there. So that's wrong. PPT is not the only visual aid that you can use. And everybody, including myself, is guilty of over abusing this medium. Whenever we have to express something or we have to say something or present something, we tend to run to PPT in the very first instance. So the point I'm trying to make is that based on the information that you have to convey, based on the size of the audience, based on the equipments available to you, you can choose PPT, but there are also other things that you can choose. For example, if you have seen BG sir, when he comes and talks to us and when he has these sessions, the PPG sessions, he doesn't use any PPT. He will use the whiteboard. He will use those flip charts and he will write things over there and point out things for us. So we can use that in an official setting as well, flip charts and whiteboards. We can also use props, which is something which I have used in the photo over here, which can be equally as effective. If we are using visual aids, we have to use them in the correct manner. Please remember that there is a reason why we call them visual aids. The reason why we call them visual aids is because they are aids and they are not the entire presentation. Charts and graphs and diagrams, models, pictures, they all add value to your presentation. But if you start using these kind of visual aids for each and every line that you have to speak, it's an extremely bad idea. If you emphasize everything, then nothing gets emphasized. Nothing seems important. And now I think many of you may have started remembering the overcrowded slides that we have all made in our lives, where we kind of dumped everything we wanted to say in the PPT and we used that. That was extremely wrong thing to do. Remember to use a visual aid only when you have to reinforce a main point or to enhance the understanding of your audience or probably to save time. That's what a visual aid should ideally be used for. And then there are some basic etiquettes that we should probably follow, some visual etiquettes. For example, limit a visual to only one main point. Don't use more than 6 lines of text or more than 6 words per line, even when you're putting stuff in a PPT, so that the text is big enough for your audience. Make them consistent in terms of font, in terms of color. You should not have 10 slides with 10 different fonts and 10 different colors. It immediately puts your audience off. Keep the design simple. Some of us are very big fans of out of the land animations, which can distract your audience more than helping them out. Using different types of visuals, mixing it up is also a very good way of getting the audience support. And then when I talk about visual etiquettes also, I think one thing which we all are again guilty of is we tend to put things on PPT and then we look at the PPT, read from there, and then we speak to the audience. It's actually supposed to be the other way around. You are supposed to present from your mind what you have to present. The PPT is basically for the audience so that they are able to understand that, okay, now Pramit is talking about this particular point, which is why that point is there on the screen. It should not be, we should not be using the PPT for looking at the points there, then remembering that I have to speak, this is the point I'm supposed to speak next, and therefore moving on with the presentation. So yes, again, the point I'm trying to make here is the more we rehearse, the more we practice, I think we all will get better at things like that. And last but not the least, have a backup. Be prepared for technical failures. Sometimes you're all set, everything is ready, PPT is about to be loaded, and there's no current. I mean, it's a fictional example, of course. In the home, you might face, now that we are working from home in Corona times, quite very much a possibility. In the office setting, not so much. But then be prepared to speak to the audience without any aids, without any visual platforms, without any props, in case the arrangements are not falling in place for you. So that is step number 7 for us, which is supporting yourself with visual aids. Show your influence, step number 8. So now if you have noticed, we are slowly moving from certain things which is as basic as organizing your speech and having you saying it the right way, making it more engaging content, using your voice, using your gestures, movements, to more a little more serious topics like how you can show your influence, how you can inspire your audience. So step 8, show your influence. The first thing that you should ask yourself whenever your agenda is to influence is to say, why should they listen to me? And there are only 4 reasons why anybody will listen to you. Number 1, you either have the knowledge. Number 2, you have the reputation. Number 3, you say things in a very sincere manner or in a convicting manner. And number 4 is your delivery is extremely confident. They will listen to you for either one or a combination of these 4 factors. So you have to be very clear in your mind that as a speaker, what do you bring to the table? So again, probably I will come back to what I told you right at the beginning of today's session, that if you are not a senior leader today in the organization, if you are somebody like probably me, or probably you are like an entry-level person, do not think that you need only reputation to go in front of an audience and speak. You may be knowledgeable about something, and that could be a reason how you can influence someone. Or maybe your delivery style is extremely confident. That is reason enough for you to go in front of an audience and speak to them. So understand why should they listen to me, and accordingly strategize your speech. Understanding your audience is again very crucial. You know, whether your audience is agreeable or maybe they don't just care. Are they hostile? Are they informed? Are they uninformed? These are all things that you have to assess. Now, all of you have been very sweet to me when I have taken the stage. I know for a fact that many a times whenever I have taken the stage in Tally, and maybe I would have told the poorest of jokes and you would have still laughed. And I know the reason why, because you have seen me for the last 8 years, you have developed a soft corner for me, and therefore you laugh. Whatever I say, you feel like laughing. But the same joke, if I go and tell somewhere outside, it will not have the desired impact because they don't know who I am. They don't have any connection with me. And therefore, I need to sit down and think that when I'm telling something to an outside audience, how do I need to restructure my words or my statements to get the desired effect from there as well? So understanding your audience, extremely crucial. The burden of proof. So sometimes when you're trying to influence someone, or when you're trying to make someone, consider an alternate viewpoint, it becomes your responsibility as the speaker or as the presenter to provide them the proof that they need to change their minds and guide them into forming new beliefs. Starting by saying something as, no, this is my viewpoint and you have to listen to me, will not help. And therefore, when you are presenting or when you are talking to people, you need to assimilate these proofs along the line of your messaging, so that when you speak to an audience, it comes across very smoothly to them. They are able to receive your burden of proof and they're able to process it, and therefore they're able to understand what your viewpoint is there as well. And the last thing over here is build it up, which is, how do you structure it in such a way that you start from the strongest concern and you end with the weakest concern. So here's a very quick clue for you. Whenever you are trying to influence someone, or whenever you're trying to, make people understand a problem solution perspective, always start from the strongest concern, addressing the strongest concern, and end with the weakest concern. We as human beings tend to remember what we heard last. And therefore, we will tend to think that maybe the concerns are weak, maybe what this guy is saying is right. Similarly, when you finish your points, make sure that you end with your strongest point. Because again, same logic, audience will remember what you told last the most vividly, the most clearly, and therefore they will think that you have made a really good argument there. So that was all about step 8, where you get to show your influence on an audience. So I think we kind of moved in a quite decent pace because we have covered 8 steps, and the time I think is 4:47. And therefore, I think we'll spend another couple of minutes on the last and final step, which is inspire your audience. Something which we all dream of doing. We all dream that one day we will stand in front of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people, mic in front of us, a powerful jazzy PPT in the background, some rock music playing in the background, and whatever we say is gulped down by the audience, every single word, and they go home all inspired and all that. We dream that. But then the starting steps of doing that are very basic, and hopefully I've been able to take you through some of the things which help you to dare to dream, dare to reach there by cracking these baby steps on the way. So the last and final step is to inspire your audience. And the first thing you need to inspire your audience is that you must connect with your audience first. And in order to connect, you must speak to some desire of theirs, some need of theirs, some concern of theirs, which they already feel, or maybe some concern which they have not even recognized so far. You have to address that. And that is the only way how you will be able to connect with your audience. Those of you who are probably from an HR background, or maybe those of you who may have studied MBA in your lifetime, you will definitely know the Maslow's model, where they say that every human being has 5 types of needs. Basic is physiological needs, then you have safety needs, then you have needs for belongingness and approval, then you have needs for self-esteem, and finally you have need of self-actualization, which means how you can meet your true potential as a person. So then you need to be very clear when you're presenting and when you're deciding a topic. You need to understand which of those needs are you addressing today, and you must very carefully structure your speech accordingly, because if you address a need, a desire, then you are immediately connecting with your audience, and this is the first step to inspire your audience. The second thing is challenging the status quo. You have to, the next step obviously is that, why and how changes will happen. Why your audience's current attitude is like this. You have to show them the way. You have to tell them that, why your current concerns, hopes, fears, goals, etc. may be inadequate or might be counterproductive, and why you need to see the point I am showing you. So that is again a journey, and you can make that journey only when you have crossed the first step, that is connect with your audience. Then only you can challenge what seems to be as the status quo. Then you need to cater to their higher selves. The next step is to motivate and challenge your audience. That can you be higher versions of yourself? Can you be nobler versions of yourselves? Can you address your higher feelings, values, hopes, desires, behaviors, goals? And elaborate on the advantages that you will have if you focus on your higher selves. And that is what will inspire them to try and make a change. And finally, conclude on a high. In order to inspire any audience in any corner of the world, you need to end on a high. So now you have connected with your audience, you have showed them a problem, and you have challenged the status quo. You have catered to their higher selves, and you have told that, if you really want to become a better human being, you need to think about solutions. You need to think about how you are going to make this world a better place, or how you're going to solve a particular problem. But all that gyan and all that message will not work if you don't end it on a high. And therefore, maybe you can use language that unites your audience, establishes a bond. Maybe you can end with an inspirational quote, or maybe an inspirational story. Or maybe your ending should be emotionally charged, so that every single person of the audience remembers what you had to say. And here I can tell you just one example. So if you remember Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's great speech on July 4th, 1944. So he gave this huge speech at Bangkok, where he spoke to Indians who are outside. And then he ended on a high. He said, give me blood and I will give you freedom. So that was how he ended that particular speech. So again, that reminds me of another example. So how it is equally important to start like Swami Vivekananda, like how he started in the World Parliament of Religions, Sisters and Brothers of America. It is equally important to end like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and tell them that, give me blood and I will give you freedom. It's equally important to start on a high and end on a high, especially when you're looking to inspire your audience. So that was the 9 steps which I wanted to share quickly with all of you today. I know it may have been a little rushed presentation because there were a lot of points which were to be covered, and I really do hope that maybe in our offline interactions I'll get to share more about these points with each and every one of you.